My best friend of 18 years was secretly dating my ex-husband. I found out in the background of a photo someone else sent me. What happened when I confronted them changed what I thought I knew about 18 years of friendship. There are photos you receive with no particular anticipation, that arrive as part of an ordinary conversation, that someone sends you because they were at an event and want to share the moment. And that when you open them and start seeing the details, you find something in the background you were not looking for, and that nevertheless changes everything in the foreground. The photo was sent to me by Camila, a university friend I did not see often, but with whom I stayed in touch. She sent it with a message. "This one came out so nice. Remember when we were so young?" It was a photo from a gathering that weekend that I had not been at. And in the background of that photo, at a different table from Camila's, were my ex-husband Javier and my best friend Sofía, together in the way two people are together who are on a date. Not in the way two people who know each other through third parties coincide at an event. Together with the specific body language of two people who are where they are because they both chose to be there. My name is Valentina. I am 41 years old. I am an industrial designer, and I have been divorced for 3 years from a man named Javier with whom I was married for 7 years, and with whom I have a daughter named Lucia, who is 9 years old. The divorce had not been a dramatic rupture. It had been the gradual end of something that had stopped working the way it needed to work, and that both of us had acknowledged with enough maturity to separate without destroying each other. Javier and I had a co-parenting arrangement that worked. We communicated well about Lucia. We were not friends, but we were adults who had decided to prioritize their daughter over any personal discomfort. Sofía had been my best friend for 18 years, since the second year of university. She was the person who had been at my wedding, who had been at Lucia's birth, who had been present supporting me through the divorce process, who knew everything there was to know about my relationship with Javier, because I had told her with the detail you tell the person you trust most. And she had been dating him secretly for 4 months. I did not respond to Camila's message immediately. I zoomed in on the photo. I looked at the image of Sofía and Javier at that table, her hand on the table near his. Him leaning toward her the way you lean toward someone who matters to you. Both of them at a social event that neither of them had mentioned to me they were going to. I saved the photo on my phone. I replied to Camila with something neutral about the photo. And I was left with what I had just seen processing somewhere that was going to require time before I knew exactly what to do. What I processed that afternoon had layers that could not easily be separated. The first was the most obvious, Sofía and Javier. Two people who knew each other because I had connected them, dating each other, without telling me anything. The second was more specific, Sofía. 18 years. Everything I had told her about Javier. The difficult things about the marriage. The reasons for the divorce. The moments where I had been most vulnerable with her about what that period had meant for me. All of that was in her when she had decided to start something with him. And she had not told me anything. The third was the one that cost me most to name, Lucia, my 9-year-old daughter who had known Sofía since she was born, who called her Aunt Sofía, who, if this continued, was going to find herself in a reality nobody had prepared her to find. I decided not to act that day, or the next. I asked my sister to stay with Lucia the following weekend and use that time to think clearly before having any conversation. What I decided at the end of that process was the following. I was going to talk to Sofía first, not Javier. Not because what was happening with Javier did not matter, but because what I needed to understand first was the Sofía part. Javier and I were ex-spouses. Sofía was my best friend, and that distinction determined the order of the conversations. I called Sofía on Monday. I told her I needed to see her. She asked whether I was okay. I told her I needed to talk to her in person and that I preferred as soon as possible. We met Tuesday afternoon at her apartment because it was the space where we had had the important conversations for years. When I arrived, she offered me tea as always. I told her no thank you. I sat down, and I showed her the photo. Sofía looked at the photo, and what I saw on her face was not surprise. It was something that was simultaneously relief and fear. The relief of someone who has been carrying something they know has to come out. The fear of someone who knows what is coming next has no comfortable way out. She told me she was sorry. Before I said anything else, she told me she was sorry and that she knew she should have told me. I told her yes. I asked her when it had started. She told me for months. I asked her why she had not told me. What Sofía told me next was honest in a way that did not necessarily make everything easier, but that the situation deserved. She told me she had been afraid of my reaction, that she knew Javier and I had a co-parenting relationship that worked and that she did not want to affect it. That at some point she had thought that if the thing with Javier did not go anywhere, there was no point in creating a problem for me over something that might be nothing. I asked her whether that had been a decision she had made alone or whether Javier had also decided not to tell me anything. She told me both of them, that they had talked about telling me and had decided to wait. I asked her how much longer they would have waited. She did not answer, and the absence of an answer told me something about how much they had really thought about me in that process. I told her 3 things. The first, that she had the right to date whoever she wanted, including Javier. That was not what had harmed me. What had harmed me was that for 4 months she had continued being my best friend on the surface while hiding something from me that directly affected my life and my daughter's. That she had continued having conversations with me about Lucia, about Javier, about co-parenting with information I did not have, and that she did. That asymmetry was not privacy. It was something different. The second, that the Lucia situation was not a minor detail. That my daughter was going to have to process the fact that the person she called Aunt Sofía was dating her dad. That required a conversation with her that I had not been able to plan because I had not known I needed to plan it. That the time they had taken from me to prepare was time that affected Lucia, not just me. The third, that I needed time to process what I felt before knowing what I wanted to happen with our friendship. That I was not making any decision at that moment. That what I did know was that what had existed between us until that Tuesday could not continue existing the same way, because that way had included something I had not chosen to include. I talked to Javier 2 days later, by phone, not because I wanted a long conversation with him, but because there was something specific I needed to tell him. That whatever decision about continuing or not with the Sofía situation, he made with the same freedom he had to make any decision in his personal life. But that the Lucia situation required both of us to be adults. That if this continued and became something Lucia was going to encounter, that conversation with her had to happen in a planned and joint way. That I was not going to be the last to know what my daughter already knew. That was non-negotiable. Javier told me he understood, that he was sorry, that they had handled the situation poorly. I told him yes, and that the Lucia situation was on the table regardless of everything else. 5 months have passed. Sofía and Javier are still together. Sofía confirmed it to me in a conversation we had 6 weeks after the Tuesday one. With Lucia, we had the conversation that corresponded. It was difficult in the specific way that conversations with 9-year-old children about things adults complicate are difficult. Lucia asked whether Aunt Sofía was going to be her new mom. I told her no. That Aunt Sofía was someone who cared about her dad, and that was something between adults that did not change who the people were who loved her. Lucia said okay and asked whether she could watch her show. Children and their ability to keep moving forward. What remains with Sofía is the hardest part of this story to describe. Not because there is a simple answer, but because 18 years are not processed in 5 months. We have talked several times. There have been conversations where what she said corresponded with what she had done and conversations where it did not. The friendship we had before does not exist the same way. I do not know whether it can exist another way. What I know is that I am in that process of finding out without rushing to a conclusion I do not yet have. What I want you to take from this story has parts for different people. For those who find themselves in Sofía or Javier's situation. If you're going to start something with the ex of someone who matters to you, tell that person before they find out through another means. Not because you have an obligation to ask for permission, but because the person who matters to you deserves the direct conversation. And the time that passes without having it is not neutral time. It is time where that person lives with an incomplete reality that you know and they do not. That asymmetry has a cost, and that cost is always greater than the cost of the difficult conversation you are avoiding. For those who find themselves in Valentina's situation, when someone you love does something that harms you, pain and anger are valid responses. And it is also valid to take the time you need before knowing what you want to happen with that relationship. You do not have to decide immediately. You do not have to forgive within a set time frame. You do not have to reach any conclusion before you are ready to reach it. What you do deserve is not to make decisions from the sharpest place of pain. And what the 18-year friendship deserves, even though it failed in this way, is at least the time to process honestly before deciding what is left. If this story touched you, comment. Do you believe there are situations where dating a close friend's ex can be compatible with maintaining the friendship, or does that combination always exact a price neither can pay? Like if you believe the time taken to say something that affects someone close forms part of the harm and is not neutral. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who is navigating something similar and who needs to hear that there is no universal right answer. Reflection to take with you. Loyalty in a friendship does not mean you cannot make your own decisions. It means the decisions that affect the other person you make with them present in the conversation and not as a done deal they discover through a third party. That distinction is the difference between privacy and concealment. And the distance between those two things is where the real harm lives.